Everyone knows the explosion happened April 26, 1986. Everyone knows about the evacuation of Pripyat, but the untold stories, the three divers who didn't die, the biorobots with 90 seconds to live, Valery Legasov's suicide 2 years later, the miners who tunneled naked, the bridge of death, the liquidators abandoned by history. These are the stories nobody tells you about Chernobyl. The three divers who lived. The most persistent myth about Chernobyl is that three men sacrificed their lives diving into radioactive water beneath the reactor and died within weeks. It's a compelling story. Three heroes on a suicide mission. They knew they would die. They went anyway. They saved millions. Except it's not true. On May 4th, 1986, just days after the initial disaster, three men did wade into the flooded basement beneath Reactor 4. Mechanical engineer Alexei Ananenko, senior engineer Valery Legasov, and shift supervisor Boris Baranov. Their mission was critical. Firefighters had pumped massive amounts of water into the reactor to control the blaze. That water flooded the basement, creating a reservoir directly beneath the exposed reactor core. If the molten nuclear fuel reached that water, it would trigger a catastrophic steam explosion, not just destroying Chernobyl, but rendering much of Europe uninhabitable for centuries. The three men had to drain the water. They had to open the valves manually. Nobody else knew where the valves were located. They suited up in diving equipment, though calling it diving overstates the reality. They waded through chest-deep radioactive water in near-total darkness, feeling their way toward the valves. The HBO series depicts this as a search for volunteers who will die within a week, a dramatic scene where men face certain death. Reality was different. The meeting in search of volunteers portrayed in the film never happened, said Oleksiy Bros, a Chernobyl engineer. This work was planned in advance. The decision came from the top down. The governmental commission tasked the power plant management, who in turn tasked Ananenko, Bespalov, and Baranov. They weren't volunteers on a suicide mission. They were engineers following orders to do their jobs. And they didn't die. Alexei Ananenko and Valery Bespalov are both believed to be alive as of 2024. Boris Baranov lived until 2005 when he died of heart disease, unrelated to radiation. On June 24, 2019, Ukraine posthumously awarded Baranov the title of Hero of Ukraine with the Golden Star Order. Ananenko and Bespalov received the same honor while still alive. The myth of the suicide divers persists because it's dramatic. The truth that they survived, that Ananenko worked in the nuclear industry for years afterward, doesn't fit the narrative people want to hear. Ananenko served as a liquidator for more than 3 years after his famous dive. On one occasion, he hit his head on a steel door at the plant and went to see the on-site doctor. The doctor wasn't there. Instead, Ananenko found a note explaining the doctor had gone to Kiev to see Soviet pop star Alla Pugacheva perform at a Chernobyl charity concert. That small, absurd detail captures something about the Chernobyl response that dramatic retellings miss. It was chaos, it was bureaucracy, it was humans doing impossible things under impossible circumstances, and sometimes surviving. Valery Legasov, the scientist who told the truth. Valery Too late to matter. The biorobots, 90 seconds to save Europe. After the explosion, thousands of tons of radioactive debris lay scattered across the roof of Reactor 3, adjacent to the destroyed Reactor 4. Before they could build the sarcophagus to contain the radiation, that debris had to be removed. The Soviets brought in robots, German and Japanese lunar rovers designed to operate in the harsh environment of the moon. If they could survive space, surely they could handle a nuclear disaster. They lasted minutes. The radiation fried their electronics immediately, so the Soviets turned to biorobots. That's what they called them. Biorobots, human beings. 3,828 men cleared 90% of the radioactive debris from the roof throughout the summer of 1986. The radiation levels were so extreme that each man could spend no more than 90 seconds on the roof. 90 seconds of radiation exposure equaled a lifetime maximum dose. Any longer meant certain death. They lined up in shifts. When the bell rang, they ran onto the roof. Each man had one shovel. He scooped up pieces of radioactive graphite from the reactor core, material so contaminated it burned through photographic film, and threw them over the edge back into the destroyed reactor. Then the bell rang again. 90 seconds, run back inside. The next team was already lined up. Their protective gear was pitiful. Rubber suits. Some men had improvised lead shields, 2 to 4 millimeter sheets stripped from government office walls, strapped to their chests, backs, and heads. Men hoping to father children fashioned lead shields to wear in their underwear. General Tarakanov ordered the lead stripping after seeing how inadequate the standard protection was. Before that, they had almost nothing. One liquidator described the experience in real-time footage that matches the HBO series almost exactly. The dosimeter scratching constantly on the soundtrack. Vision obscured by the anti-radiation suit. Movements clumsy and slow. He struggled to get even one piece of graphite onto his shovel, maybe 3 or 4 pieces total before the bell rang. Then he ran for his life, except he tripped. His foot caught under a chunk of graphite. He scrambled free, landing in a radioactive puddle, and stumbled inside. 90 seconds never felt so long. Some workers went back for a second sprint, some even a third. The records don't specify how many. The records don't specify how many died or developed life-destroying disabilities, because no records were kept. The official number is 3,828 biorobots. A documentary titled Chernobyl 3828 was made about them in 2011. But even that number may be low. Early estimates suggested 3,400 men, but the real total came out later. What happened to them afterward is largely unknown. The Soviet Union fell. Benefits promised to liquidators were often never paid. Medical care was sporadic at best. Studies conducted years later concluded that cancer rates among liquidators were no higher than non-exposed control groups. But those studies are disputed. Many liquidators developed cancers, radiation-induced disabilities, and died young. 3,828 men, 90 seconds each. Human beings called biorobots, so it was easier to send them to die. The miners who tunneled naked. 400 miners arrived from across the Soviet Union within days of the explosion. Their mission: tunnel beneath Reactor 4 to install a cooling system that would prevent the molten core from reaching the groundwater and contaminating Europe's water supply for generations. The job was almost impossible. The tunnel had to be hand-dug because large equipment and pneumatic drills might weaken the foundation and trigger a meltdown. The miners worked in thin cotton shirts in sweltering heat. Radiation levels made protective equipment useless, and it would have been unbearably hot anyway. So they worked naked. In the HBO series, a gruff miner tells Legasov they'll dig naked because the heat down here is incredible. When Legasov tries to assure them the protective suits will keep them safe, the miners sees through the lie immediately. This actually happened. The miners worked at superhuman pace. Millions of lives depended on them finishing before the core melted through. The estimated completion time was 3 months. They finished in 6 weeks. They didn't just push mine carts, they ran. Drenched in sweat, covered in radioactive dust, they sprinted back and forth through the tunnel. The cruel irony? Their sacrifice may have been unnecessary. The core began cooling by itself. The heat exchanger they installed under the reactor was never used. But nobody knew that would happen. The miners gave everything based on what they understood at the time. Many died young. Many developed radiation-induced diseases. Most received inadequate medical care and broken promises about benefits and support. They're called liquidators. They saved Europe. History mostly forgot them. The Bridge of Death. On the night truth is more complicated than the legend. The liquidators, 600,000 forgotten heroes. The term liquidator applies to everyone involved in the Chernobyl cleanup. Firefighters who battled the initial blaze, plant operators in the control room, the 3 divers, the biorobots, the miners, helicopter pilots who dropped sand and boron on the exposed reactor, soldiers who shot contaminated animals, engineers who built the sarcophagus, medical professionals, scientists, construction workers. Between 1986 and 1987 alone, 240,000 recovery workers were called upon, according to the World Health Organization. Over the following years, that number grew to somewhere between 600,000 and 800,000 liquidators. Special certificates were issued to 600,000 people, officially recognizing them as liquidators and qualifying them for benefits. Many of those benefits were never paid. When the Soviet Union collapsed, promises dissolved with it. The liquidators lived in tent camps. Many slept on bare ground or used contaminated haystacks for bedding. Medical care was inconsistent. Nobody tracked radiation exposure accurately. Many liquidators arrived from nearby villages with little understanding of the danger. One soldier reported seeing a man take a parachute that had been used to drop sand on the reactor. The man planned to have his wife make trousers from it. The official death toll from Chernobyl is 31 people, those who died in the immediate aftermath from acute radiation sickness. The actual number, according to estimates, is in the tens of thousands when you include long-term cancer deaths and radiation-induced illnesses. The World Health Organization and other organizations conducted studies attempting to quantify the deaths. Estimates range from 4,000 to 93,000 depending on methodology and what counts as Chernobyl-related. The liquidators were praised as heroes by Soviet propaganda. Monuments were erected, but actual support, medical care, financial compensation, recognition often failed to materialize. Liquidators who survived are now in their 60s, 70s, and 80s. Many suffer from cancers, heart disease, and other conditions linked to radiation exposure. Many died young without seeing their children grow up. They prevented a disaster that could have rendered much of Europe uninhabitable. They worked with inadequate protection because the alternative was unthinkable, and history has largely forgotten them. The shooting of the pets. One task like the roof clearing, but the mental and emotional damage was profound. The sarcophagus, 206 days of construction. By December 1986, workers had completed the sarcophagus, a massive concrete and steel structure encasing Reactor 4. It was built in 206 days under lethal radiation conditions. The sarcophagus was never meant to be permanent. It was a temporary fix, something that could be built quickly to limit radiation release while buying time for a long-term solution. Estimated lifespan, 20 to 30 years. By the 2000s, experts worried the structure was becoming unstable. Radiation had degraded the materials. Cracks appeared. Weather damage accumulated. In 2016, a new structure called the New Safe Confinement was completed. It's an enormous arch, 35,000 tons, built on tracks and slid over the existing sarcophagus. It's designed to contain the radioactive remains for the next 100 years. Cleanup is scheduled for completion by 2065. 40 years after the explosion, the work continues. The lies that killed. Chernobyl fully understanding the risk. Most of them trusted what they were told. They believed they were safe. They believed the situation was under control. But the truth was very different. Chernobyl shows us something simple but powerful. When truth is hidden, people suffer. When leaders delay the truth, the damage becomes worse. Because danger doesn't wait, and lies don't protect anyone. They only make things worse. This story is not just about an explosion. It is about people. People who were sent into danger without knowing everything. People who followed orders because they believed it was their duty. People who showed courage, even when they were afraid. Some went into dark water under the reactor. Some climbed onto dangerous rooftops for a few seconds at a time. Some worked deep underground in extreme heat. Some flew above something they knew was deadly. They did what they were told. They did what they believed was right. Many of them did not think about themselves. They thought about saving others. And because of that, a much bigger disaster was stopped. But their stories were not always told. Many of them went home sick. Many lived with pain for the rest of their lives. Some did not live long enough to see their families grow. And over time, many were forgotten. Not because what they did was small, but because the world moved on. This is what makes this story important. It reminds us that behind every disaster, there are real people. Not just numbers, not just reports, but human lives. It also teaches us something simple. The truth matters. When people are told the truth, they can protect themselves. They can make better decisions. They can stay safe. But when the truth is hidden, even for a short time, the damage becomes bigger. People don't understand the danger. They don't know what is really happening, and they cannot protect themselves. Silence can be just as dangerous as the disaster itself, because silence delays action, and delay makes everything worse. This is why this story still matters today, not because of the past, but because of what it teaches us for the future. Mistakes can happen anywhere, but hiding those mistakes makes them more dangerous. Chernobyl is a reminder that honesty is important, a reminder that human lives should always come first, a reminder that truth should never be ignored, and most of all, a reminder that behind every disaster, there are people who risk everything to make things right. Even if the world forgets them, their actions still matter, and they always will.